Hey everybody, Dan Schinder here
And Steven Shinder here.
on
Yesshift, a father-son podcast where we talk about Yes members and people who've worked with Yes members.
father-son team. He's the father, I'm the son.
It's the other way around, but
Oh,
you were
I
close.
always forget that. That's right. And we're thrilled to have with us our guest. We're big fans of Dave Kerzner, has a great body of work and has worked with so many different people. Dave, welcome and thanks for taking time to join us and let us talk about not only your new album, but your career and some other musical influences and things.
Thanks. For a second, I thought you said I had a great body. I thought that's
We'll stand up and back up a little bit. We'll let the fans rate it.
You got a great body.
We only have guests that have great bodies
Yeah,
of musical work.
Progressive rock. You got to be fit.
That's right. For all the chicks that show up at Prog shows.
Oh my gosh.
Actually, my girlfriend gave me a hard time because I'm her gym buddy, and I said I can't go today. I have an interview, and she's like, I'm like, yeah, this is excuses.
That's so funny. I remember back in the day when there were almost no girls at a Rush show or a Yes show or a Genesis show. I remember back that far when that was the case. Now it's a whole different thing. I've seen a nephew who would be my parents' grandchild at a Yes show with all of us and stuff over the years. So yeah. Cool. So let's start with this. Where did you start in music, and what were some of your first influences, Dave?
Well, I started playing piano when I was like, I don't know, 7, and that turned into, I was like taking lessons and everything, but I didn't really like the lessons. I liked just writing my own songs and making up my own thing. So I eventually got
Typical 7-year-old, by the way.
well, I think by the time I was 11 or 12, this was how I felt. I'd sort of taken lessons and, learned enough to be able to play, but wanted to do my own thing. So I bought a synthesizer at Radio Shack.
Nice.
Prog. It was very cool. I still have one. It's not the same one, but and put together a band in my garage and everything. And so that was when I was 12 and 13. So that kind of started it. My early influences musically were bands like Genesis, Yes, of course, many others. Even bands like Styx, Kansas, Boston, because in the U.S., that's also pretty big around that time, early 80s. And Rush, you're talking about Rush. Rush Signals, which is one of my favorites, was a big influence. And then, from there, just kind of kept with it. Bought more synthesizers.
That's right. Steve's very familiar with your 50th anniversary production that you put together, the Yes tribute album titled Yesterday and Today. So I'm going to hand it to Steve. I know he's got some questions about that, and you've got just not only a great body, but a great body of musicians that participated in that. And we'll dig into that in a moment.
Yeah, so I actually have a funny story about when I listened to this. It was back when I was working as a sign spinner, and so I would listen to music to help the shift pass by, and so this made for a good listen during that shift. Hey, Yes shift, what do you know? But yeah, you were able to get a wide variety of guests. Like you got Yes members like John Davison, Jeff Downes, Tony Kaye, Billy Sherwood, Jay Shellen, and you even had Tom Brisson on there, and also people like Steve Hackett and just like lots of people. So what was it like getting all these different people from within and outside of Yes, and how did the song selection process for that go?
Well, I did that. I co-produced that with Fernando Perdomo, who is a guitar player who plays with me in my solo band, a lot of projects, and he works with a lot of people. So we're both big Yes fans, and we play on Cruise to the Edge, which was a cruise originally hosted by Yes. Wasn't this past year, but originally,
Right.
We're on every cruise and cruise to the edge, close to the edge. So it's a festival on the boat. And through that, I made friends with Jeff Downs, who was a big hero of mine growing up. But before that, I maybe I met John Davison through Cruise to the Edge as well. But I've known Billy Sherwood since going back to the '90s when I used to play with an artist named Kevin Gilbert, and I've worked with Billy on a number of different things. And I'm also in a band that you may know, Arc of Life. It's an offshoot of Yes with John Davison, Billy Sherwood, Jimmy Hahn, and Jay Shellen, and me. In fact, I'm the only one in the band who wasn't with Yes at one point, director. But honorary Yes branch. I don't know what. But and then Tom Brislin I've known for many years as well. And Steve Hackett I've worked with a number of times already on my solo records, and I played on his played on Supper's Ready keyboards on his Genesis Revisited too.
Yeah.
So and Robert Barry, who I've known for a long time but never worked with before. So this was a good opportunity. He sang on Changes, did a great job. I always thought he would do that. He's sort of in that vein. He was in Emerson, Lake and Palmer, or the Three. It's called Three.
Right.
Right.
It's in Palmer and him. We just, as far as the song selection, we just kind of, Fern and I like to have just fun celebrating the music we love. We don't have time to be like in tribute bands full time like some people do, but occasionally where we get the chance, because our main thing is writing and producing, our own music, or his thing is he works with people every day. I don't do that, but I work with different people, and I like to work on mostly original music, but where we get the chance, it's too much fun, to do like, let's say, a one-off gig sometimes, or a tribute album. So we've done a few. We've done one for Rush. There's a Genesis one coming. We did this. Yes, we kind of put the pedal to the metal for the Yes one because we work with Yes's management, and I have just a lot of ties to Yes. And it was like the 50th anniversary. We thought, all right, let's get this one done for the 50th anniversary, to celebrate it. So we pulled together resources. We got some people who do play with tribute bands like Joe Cass, Johnny Bruins. They were just instant, like, we need someone who can play this part or that part. And like Machine Messiah, Nick DiVirgilio sang on it with Rainy Stein, and he was supposed to drum on it, but he wasn't available to drum. And we're like, oh my God, we need a drum track. And it was me playing keyboards with Jeff Downs. I love drama. I love Jeff. And Joe stepped in and did it the last minute and like saved the day.
Yeah, we had Joe on recently, actually, and he mentioned that.
Oh, yeah. He's great. And, so everyone, the spirit of that album is like, we love Yes, and we're kind of celebrating Yes with Yes.
Yeah.
So with the guys from Yes. So these are the people that I'm friends with. I've worked with John Anderson before, but I try not to get political, between the two. I'm sort of, in the other group faction or whatever. But actually, I love Rabin, Wakeman, Anderson. I love all those guys. I'm one of those Yes fans who doesn't pick. I like them all.
That's how we are.
Guys. They're all great. So, but in terms of putting the album together and keeping it kind of, we just reached out to people who just naturally, natural fit and naturally just like our friends, that we could just say, hey, you want to play on this? Not a whole big thing to go through managers or make anything kind of complex or complicated, politically, just straight up like, hey, you know what? Let's ask Brislin if he wants to do this part, and that's how it came together.
That's awesome. You mentioned Steve Hackett, and we actually, two coincidences. We had Steve on this morning. We had Craig Blundell, who's drummer, yesterday, and
right.
So that's yesterday and today. How about that?
There you go. And I first found out about you when I met Simon Collins back in the Sound of Contact days. So that's what that tie-in is.
Cool.
which is interesting. Is there any possibilities with Sound of Contact in the future with you? No? Okay.
Just leave a little room for hope.
Okay.
But there was even something I was hoping we could do for the 10th anniversary, and it's just not possible.
Okay.
And it's not, it's not for any lack of me wanting to make these things happen, but I give up. I just give up. That project just was like the biggest tease, because
I get that, because I love it.
Yeah, Dimensionaut is such a great album.
We love what we did, and people seem to love it, and still talk about it today. So it's like, if we could only but we can't. We just can't. That band is just a non-functioning entity as a group, and it's, it's a shame, but it is what it is. And actually, one of the biggest things for me coming out, especially with this new album, my new album, The Traveler, because I'm actually releasing the final songs that I had for Sound of Contact, going back to Dimensionaut. About half this new album were songs that almost were going to be Dimensionaut that we worked on.
Oh, wow.
And so for me, it's kind of like a milestone of like putting it behind me.
Yeah, kind of closing the loop on that.
Yeah, like closure.
And it's how many years forward? Like 8? Right?
Well, no.
7 or 8, 10, or almost.
Oh, we did Dimensionaut in 2010.
Oh, wow.
And we
worked on songs.
Wow. And I kind of feel like sometimes when you do that, the songs, if they're not finished and released, they're like in purgatory.
Yeah.
They're like in like this like in between, and it's not a good feeling as a songwriter, because you sort of feel like they're your babies and you're responsible to kind of like, look, I like this song, and it was started and everything. And these were my songs that we had worked on. So they were, I actually released collaborated songs with a project I have called In Continuum. So In Continuum has 2 albums, and those 2 albums have the songs that either I wrote or I wrote with Simon and the other guys. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be on Sound of Contact's second record. But The Traveler, my new solo album that just came out, has songs from Dimensionaut that if Dimensionaut was going to be a 2 CD thing, which it almost was maybe, these would have been on there. But we decided to, we left off one song called So Real that ended up on Simon's most recent solo record, but he did a new version of it. So the Sound of Contact version, sadly, will probably never be heard, even though for the 10th anniversary, I would have wanted maybe some of that and some of the, I can't. It's out of my control. That's the problem. Sometimes you probably hear about this talking to different music artists and bands. Sometimes you have control of your catalog, and then sometimes you don't. Right. Or it's people, and you have to do things with them, and they have to agree. And it's like, okay. So, I would have done like 5.1. I would have done everything, but I have no control over that. It's the only album in all the music that I've written that I don't have any control over. I have co-control over Mantra Vega. I have total control over my solo works, and more or less, there's a few distribution deals and things. I can't just do anything I want, but I could do mostly creatively what I want with most of my work, except for Dimensionaut, because I don't own the masters. It's like I just wrote most of the music and the lyrics, but I don't. I can do covers, which I do actually. I cover my own songs. That's about the best I can do.
Good. Well, maybe in 38 years, some kids being born this year will do the 50th anniversary tribute album. You never know. No one imagined what you did back, right? You never know. Let's play some of your new music. I'd like to first pull up The Traveler. This is a teaser, and then let's talk about how your new album came together and the inspiration behind it all. Check this out, folks. Turn it up.
Across the sand, all is will understand.
All we need is here and now.
Waves of evolution. The wave of evolution.
So good. What, that is a teaser indeed. Who's on that track in particular?
Well, so I have 3 studio solo albums that I did after Sound of Contact. New World, which came out in 2014. Static, which came out in, I think, 2017. Yeah, and then now this. I used to think I did an album a year, but I guess I don't.
It just feels like
the way time passes, it feels like a year apart. But yeah,
I'm not as prolific as I think I am. No, but So anyway, they're all concept albums, and they're all tied together. So that particular song, which is called "Here Now" Part 1. So the teaser is really a lot of this song, "Here and Now" Part 1, just like an edited version. And it actually brings in elements of, especially the voice speaking elements from New World, and it ties it in, and there's some meaning behind it. But so you're hearing Heather Findlay, Durga McBroom, the late David Longdon, who was a guest on New World and did some speaking parts. Emily Lynn from the Australian Pink Floyd does the main voiceover. And then musically, it's Nick DiVirgilio on drums, who plays drums on most of the record. The other drummer is Marco Miniman. Oh, and then Alex Cromartie from Montravega is also the third drummer. And me on keyboards, Fernando Perdomo on guitar. And it's either Billy Sherwood on bass. I think that is, it's either Billy or Matt Dorsey from Sound of Contact on bass. I'd have to look.
Yeah, Steve's actually got the list with the tracks. While Steve looks that up and checks you if he has to, and he will.
It says, it doesn't list Billy for that track on what I have. So, yeah.
Okay. That's weird because I think he is on that.
So Matt Dorsey's on.
Here in that Part 2 for sure. I might have.
Oh, wait. I think I was looking at the wrong track number. Yeah, I think maybe it is Billy. Oh wait, it says Matt and Billy are on.
Yeah, they're both on.
Yeah.
So on that song, I had them both play bass, and then I picked the best parts from each.
Nice.
The bass players going back and forth.
That's great. 2 completely different axes that they're playing, or similar?
No, 2 completely different.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're not completely different. Sorry, Billy's had a little bit more bite. Like a little more squirey.
The Spectre?
And I actually like the Rickenbackers. So I forget if, I think actually Matt was playing a Spectre too. So, but they play a little differently. And I think, like, for instance, I think Billy plays with a pick and Matt plays with his fingers. So, but I don't know. But either way, that's how it sounded to me, was like Billy's parts were the ones that cut through. You don't hear it as much on this version, but there's a Here and Now Part 2, which ends the album. Right. And there's some moments that are just very, Squire.
Nice.
But then, morph back into, I mean, one of the whole things about what I do, and I'm not the only one, a lot of neo-prog, modern prog artists do this, but just speaking for my own music, I fuse a lot of my influences together in a obvious way, like in a way that's like celebrating the music as opposed to trying to pretend I'm like coming up with something completely original and you've never heard before. It's like, the whole point of it is like taking the forefathers of the genre, King Crimson, Genesis, Pink Floyd, and the Beatles. I mean, so many others also that aren't considered prog per se, but whatever. They're like the founders of the rock the classic
Yeah.
rock genre.
And a bit of psychedelia mixed in with some of those earlier artists you mentioned.
Yeah, but blended together with new songs that don't try to just be like, we're not trying to be a Yes copy or a Genesis copy or anything like that. It's like, well, no, but you'll just hear things and you go, oh, that's very Yes. In fact, that's John Davison. You know what I mean? Like that's John Davison, and it's very Yes-ish. It's like, well, why not have him? And on In Continuum, John Anderson guests. And no, is it In Continuum? Yes, John Anderson guests. And then there's also it's a song I wrote with John Anderson that John Davison sings.
Yeah, because I know John Davison was on the tracks I listened to. I didn't hear John Anderson on.
Right. He's on something, I think. But I co-wrote it with John. And then, because I was going to do a record with John. So right before Dimensionaut, in fact, one of the songs, Beyond Illumination, on Dimensionaut was originally called Don't Leave Me Now, and it was a song I was going to do with John Anderson. I was going to do this kind of like John Vangelis thing. You know, we were toying around with him because I had played with him. I did a show with him at the NAMM show, and he wanted to work with me. And so we sent tracks back and forth, but it was just kind of hard to pin down. Like, okay, let's, and of course you could see when he released that Thousand Hands album, what goes on, there's just all sorts of people waiting to see what's going to happen with some project that started with him. So I kind of probably was wise to just say, hey, I'm going to finish this song with Sound of Contact and release that. I finished another one. I think it's called All That Is within Continuum. And I think that's the one that he co-wrote, the melody. Mm-hmm. And I got John Davison to sing it. I asked John what he thought, John Anderson. I said, do you want to sing it? And I explained the concept, and I said, and he's like, well, he said, no, you can have someone sing it, and then, but we'll be co-writers or whatever. And so he was cool with it.
Did he hear it, Dave, with John Davison on it?
I don't know. I didn't want to be too weird, like as far as not weird, but like, hey, here it is. I got John. I didn't tell him I was going to get John Davison to sing it, but, or maybe I did, I forget, but like he was cool with just like the idea of like us co-writing it. Because I told him it was the character singing is an alien. And so I was like, all right, just do you want to sing this? But here's the deal. It's a concept album, and I think with me writing the lyrics and it being part of the concept album, he'd prefer someone else singing it. Whereas if I gave it to him and let him write the lyrics, which I mean, if you asked, I probably would have, but it would have been like how is he going to write to fit my concept album? So I would have just done it probably just because like you don't say no to John Anderson, but it made more sense. And John Davison is a huge fan of John Anderson, and even though he's in this other thing, the whole side, he still has so much appreciation for John Anderson and really loved singing that track.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, and to your point about the influences, I listened to the other solo albums before this one, New World and Static, and I think it was Crossing the Fates reminded me of Astral Traveler, and Millennium Man reminded me of Chris Squire's Lucky Seven, I think it was, or maybe it was Silently Falling. I don't remember off the top of my head, but to your point, there are some of those influences, but it never feels like a copy. Like all of it feels it felt very new to me just listening to each of these albums from start to finish. And New World I actually listened to like during a long walk and sing sides. So it was really great for that sort of thing.
Thank you.
That's cool. Let's give everyone another sample. This is A Time in Your Mind. Check this out and then we'll talk about it.
Something moving in the dead of night. I was searching for a shred of light. All the years of learning who we are. Baggage heavy when you travel far. We live on the edge of a knife. Another trap, another life. Don't miss out on love in your life. Something lurking through a veiled disguise. In the doorway there's a watering eye. It sees the truth and all you choose.
But I don't want to play the whole song, folks. You got to buy the album. I love that, though. I hear a lot of different influences, and I love the production of it, too. Nick's drums sound great. Of course, you have Durga there and Billy, and just a great lineup. And the fat sound. I love that kind of sound. Me, personally, I love when a studio album has a live sound, and it breathes, and it's not overproduced. And I know that that's subjective, but I think everyone knows what I mean. You know, there's tinsel, there's auditorium, and that sweet spot in the middle is that nice fat live sound, even though it's studio produced, which is cool.
Thanks.
Who were the biggest influences on that song?
On A Time in Your Mind?
Yeah.
Well, I guess Genesis.
Yeah.
What happened was I recently purchased Tony Banks keyboards from the
wow.
ones.
Oh yeah, I remember reading that. Yeah. Literally the keyboards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unlike Rick Wakeman's, which were being sold for like thousands and thousands of dollars on Reverb, which, you know, it's like $15,000 for a mini Moog. I mean, if I had tons of money, actually, I would have bought that. But I don't have dispensable cash like that. But for a very reasonable price, I was offered from Tony and Mike the equipment from their studio, because I've done some work with them and I've helped them a lot over the years. I have a software company called IK Multimedia that I'm a partner with, and we make plugins, and so they're very grateful. They use that. Tony used it live for the last Genesis tour, and Jeff Downs uses it, and a lot of John Anderson uses it. I mean, a lot of the people use it. So I think some of the people I've met is through that as well. So it's Cruise to the Edge, and you know, you talk about like, how did you get all these people? It's like, I've been in the industry for a long time, and you start to meet people doing one way or another all these different things. Mm-hmm. So I kind of felt with the combination, I guess, of having half the album be songs that were kind of earmarked for Sound of Contact, which had Phil Collins' son, was already naturally a little bit leaning towards Genesis, and buying Tony's keyboards and wanting to use them, I kind of felt like, and Genesis wrapping it up and everything, I thought, because we are doing a Genesis tribute album that's very similar to the 50th anniversary to Yes. Fernando and I are doing that, but that's a tribute album, covers doing their songs, and a whole bunch of different artists, not just me. Mm-hmm. So for me personally, I kind of made it a little bit like an homage, like a tip of the hat to Tony Banks and Genesis. So there's certain Easter eggs in the lyrics and music, arps, solos, and you know. So this particular song has a lot of Prophet 10, his Prophet 10,
wow.
70, and kind of like an Abacab, a Duke Abacab production style, which was very fat actually with the drums. Yeah. And one of my favorite drums for Yes, even though I mean, it doesn't get any better than Close to the Edge with Bill Bruford, but one of my favorite sounds is the drums from Drama.
Yeah.
Which were Hugh Padgham, recorded by Hugh Padgham, who also did Abacab.
Yeah.
And,
Can I comment on that real quick, Dave?
Sure, yeah.
Something I always talk about when on this show the discussion goes to that bridge. Steve knows exactly where I'm going with this. If you listen to the soundscape of Tormato versus Drama, it sounds like a 20-year gap in technology. The fat ass sound of Drama, and then you've got this little Walkman sound of Tormato. And I love the music on Tormato. I love it. I play to it so much, but the production is like from one planet to another. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, that's part of the allure of Drama, I think.
I like Drama too. I'm sorry, I like Tomato as well. But the production quality on that record is really poor, whereas Going for the One is actually great.
Yeah,
one of the best sounding Yes records. But yeah, Tormato, they just kind of, I don't know. But Drama sounds great. And, of course, you got Trevor Horn, who ended up being a great producer.
Yeah.
And even though I don't think he produced that, but he was in the band. Right. And then Hugh Padgham and everybody involved. That record, and of course Jeff, is one of my favorite Yes records, as is 90125. Even though I'm a Yes
classic
guy. You know what I mean? It's not that I'm my favorite Yes record is probably Close to the Edge, and then nice. Fragile, and I would like Tales, but I think it's got some issues. It's the ancient, the guitar is out of tune. There's things to it.
You've been speaking with Rick Wakeman.
I love Rick.
What I mean is he has the same exact sentiment.
Oh, really? Yeah. It could have been really good and has some beautiful moments on it.
Yes, absolutely.
But and the cover is amazing. And there's a lot of things that are great about it. I mean, and that's being picky. As far as albums go, it's still one of my favorites. Relayer, Going for the One. So I mean, that's classic Yes to me. But up there are Drama and 90125. After that, there's hit and miss things that I like or whatever. But 90125 is a brilliant record, and it's very different. But it's just a great record. Less of a Yes type. It's a blend of the Trevors. And there's a production and everything, but just really unique. And Drama, like we're saying, it's just it's just a cool sounding record, more aggressive. Steve Howe record is awesome.
Yeah. It was great live too. I sat in the 8th row in the round at the Forum, and it was just mind blowing. There's a point where you see someone play, and you just get so inspired. You can't wait to get home and play. And then if it goes over that, you just want to go home and burn all your shit. That's how I felt. I wanted to just go home and burn everything. It was so good.
Every show I've ever been to, I've never said this. I don't think I've told anybody this, strangely enough. But it's weird because almost every show I go to, I want to go home and work on music. Since I was a kid.
Yeah.
I go and half of me wants to leave and go work on music, and the other half wants to stay and enjoy it. But I'm immediately inspired.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's what I want to do. I want to go on stage and I want to present new music.
That one just hit me really hard live because there was this who are these two guys from this new wave poppy band, and being a classic guy since Fragile, all of that. And they way over-delivered. Just way over-delivered. They did such a great job translating it live. And what's that?
You're lucky you saw that. I did see 90125 tour, and that was great.
Yeah.
I never saw the Drama tour. I was too young. But I bought the album, loved it. And I think I bought it after I bought Asia, which I also loved, the first Asia record.
Ah, yeah.
And then I went backwards, and then and I had when I was a kid, so I had that Yes Classics album. Yes, what was that album that had the cool Roger Dean? Well, they're all cool.
Was it just classic Yes, the one with the tower that's kind of green,
illuminated in neon, sort of?
Yeah, I had that, and so at first. And then I got Drama, and then I got everything else, because that was the age, that's when I was starting to get into that stuff. So,
yeah.
And then I remember before that a friend of mine bought Close to the Edge on LP, on vinyl. And I didn't understand. I'm like, this only has 3 songs. I'm like, dude, you got ripped off, man. I didn't understand.
Ripped off. Close to the Edge. What a rip off. 3 songs.
I wasn't fully into Prog yet. I must have been 12, 13. And I was just I was 3 songs. That's not an album. I'm like, I don't know.
That's so funny. The production of that, there is no other album I can think of by anybody where the production, it sounds kind of like Close to the Edge. no, there's nothing you could say that about. The way all the instruments sounded, the way the voices sounded, the way it was mastered, every little detail, it's on its own. It really is. It's just so different. Just amazing.
It's kind of one of the bars for me.
Yeah.
I reached it, but I haven't really tried. I'm friends with a guy named Jeremy Stacy, who's one of the many drummers of King Crimson. And we've talked about, he's into all this stuff too. And he loves Bruford. And of course, Bruford was in King Crimson, but not at the same time. Yeah. And talking about how great that album sounds, and talking about the studio that they recorded in, Advision. And Jeremy actually has some of the channel strips from Advision, which is very, very rare. Wow. But I have a feeling that that's part of it to some extent, very open sounding. So I have a few mic pre's that are similar to it. And I'm thinking about like, how can I get some of that element to record drums? But there's just so much to it. And I think, Bill Bruford, I mean, especially at that time, it was just nothing like it. Nothing ever will be. He's just cuts through the mix, and he did on Fragile too. But like on that album, it was more clear. You hear everything, and the way that they did things, where probably out of most rock bands, you hear the bass feature more. Maybe Rush also, because they were a trio.
Right.
With Rush and Yes, with Chris Squire and Geddy Lee, and of course they were playing Rickenbackers, and those cut through, and they were running them through like fuzz boxes and amps and things that were distorting.
Leslie.
But also like the arrangements. Like I was thinking about, like, let's say Roundabout, which is Fragile, but how smart and weird it was that they were doing it on acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
And left all this room for you to hear the bass in all its glory.
Yeah.
And so, that era of Yes is just fascinating to me from a production standpoint and an arrangement standpoint. But, I think that when I work on my music, especially like original songs, I'm just writing what comes authentically through me, like what feels. I'm not sitting there going, man, I need to write an album like close to it. In my dreams, maybe that's in there. I'd love to write an album that you would say, what, this is the only album I've ever heard that sounds anywhere near like. But I don't think that way. I think more in terms of, hey, this song came out and I need to finish this song, and this would go well with that song, and not have an album. But and then as I'm doing it, I'm painting with those colors of like, oh yeah, we, like, for instance, there's a song on my album Static called Reckless, and for some reason, it's kind of a Zeppelin-y song, whatever. But for some reason, I felt like it needed a drum break, like a drum solo, which is rare on a studio album. And so Derek Cintron was the drummer. And he's more of a Zeppelin, Neil Peart kind of guy, and doesn't know King Crimson, Yes, Bill Bruford as much. And so he was playing something, and he was just blowing through the whole thing. And it was great. It was impressive. I said, listen, how about speaking with the drums with phrases? And I played him, I think it was Indiscipline from King Crimson. I said, now listen to this. I was giving him like a little education on it. I said, he's, it's like phrases.
It's one of my favorite things by Bill.
Yeah. Right. It's brilliant. And it's also, sometimes it's like the pauses are as important as what you're playing. So you have context, right? So I was explaining to him, and he had never done that before, and he did a great job. And that's how it is. It just gets like, these little chunks of cool playing. And so that's a moment where, let's say, I specifically used what I learned from Bill Bruford and King Crimson of like, no, like this works because I've heard it work, and it's more impactful than just playing impressively fast through the whole thing or whatever.
Absolutely.
So, but that was just because the song called for that, as opposed to if, like, let's say with Arc of Life, Maybe, although I'm not the producer, I'm not even the writer, and I'm not, so I don't have, that's another project actually that I don't have control over, but it's okay. Those are my friends and I'm just their keyboard player. They asked me to join their band. I'm happy to do it. But if I was producing a RES record, but an Arc of Life record, I would say yes to either. I would love to be like, okay, let's, at least from a production standpoint, go for, close to the edge quality, sonically at least. You know what I mean? And be like, all right, let's make an effort here, because that means maybe we should be using something like the Advision console or something similar and do this, and maybe think about the approach to the album that I think they did. I don't know for sure, but in general, I think the way, especially I was reading an article about Steven Wilson remixing Close to the Edge.
Yeah.
And someone asked him a very obvious question, which was like, how did you get it to sound just like the original album? And he said, when you pull up the faders, 90% of it just sounds like the album. And that's because back then you took all this processing of all this gear, like this type of stuff, and you put it right onto the tape.
Yeah,
and
on the track.
So while the band was sitting there working it out live together, Eddie Offer was in the studio going,
getting the sounds.
I have nothing to do here, so I'm going to dial this sound in while they're doing their thing. And all that time together doing that, they just got the magic to the tape.
Yeah.
So I think if you have the right gear and you think of things in terms of the arrangements and everything, like, okay, and you analyze it from almost like a scientific, just like, what is it about this production at least? Because the songwriting and everything else is another story. You don't want to copy it, but it's okay to they have these classes called Mixed with the Masters and all these things where they talk, where, the original engineers, not Eddie Offord, unfortunately, but a few pads and other engineers, Tom Algie, will break apart. I think there was one even with Trevor Horn, or there was a video where he was breaking down Owner of a Lonely Heart. I found it fascinating.
We watched that.
Right? So I love that. So if you had Eddie Offord, have you interviewed him, by the way?
I haven't.
We would love to, if there's a way to get in touch with him.
I tune in on that. But anyway, if you don't have the original engineer, then you just kind of listen and go, oh, okay. Seems like they're doing this or they're doing that, and you can listen to the 5.1s where you have more separation, and so you can
dissect it.
Yeah, and just kind of understand it. What it is sonically about. You're like, and I've learned things from different engineers and producers about which mics they used, and it's like not what you think. It's like a ribbon mic or this mic,
right?
And so I would love to do a project where I'm starting from scratch. We haven't recorded parts yet. I'm always working on albums that I've already started on, or somebody sent me tracks and I'm like, let's turn this into an album. But if I had the budget, that's also a factor. And we just could go into a studio. Advision is no longer around, so you don't have that option.
Right.
But just do some of the things deliberately with the bar set here and going, all right, let's and you may not arrive there, but I think having those standards and having an approach to the production, as long as it doesn't make the music sound contrived and the songwriting contrived, then it can be a really good thing, because it's like it'll have some of the qualities of that, but be something new, which is even better.
I love that. What's a song of yours that I could pull up, and if it means going back to a time in your mind, I'd love to give Durga McBroom a nod and show off her voice a bit. I love her singing. What's a song I can pull up? Because we didn't get to the chorus when I played that. Should I pull that back up?
Well, if you want to go to my Bandcamp page, and if you go to sonicelements.bandcamp.com.
I wouldn't be able to hear because I played the video.
You want to hear the video?
Yeah, so that they could hear it and see it.
Go to my Facebook page. There's Feels Like Home. Although you can't really hear Durga's part.
Is that
I haven't released. Maybe you can actually hear it at the end.
How about Into the Sun?
Yeah, you can play that.
Even though that's not from the same album, right?
Yeah, no, that's from, play that one.
Can we play it? It's still your music, for goodness sake.
Play anything you want.
Okay. Check it, folks.
Put your desires in motion. You took on the risk of the flight. Knowing certain danger awaits. Ignoring the flaws of your plight. It's not right. All systems would go for the mission. All signals inviting the quest. Passion goes into orbit. Fire in your chest. It's not right. Into the sun. Far away from everyone.
Just beautiful. That's another one we'll make them buy to hear the rest. I just love her voice. In 2014, I think the second year of Drum Talk TV, Dave, when we were doing the NAMM show, I got with Durga actually to interview her on Drum Talk TV to talk about music and working with different drummers. And I got her to sing a few bars of Great Gig in the Sky, and I just melted. And we had something in common as well, because my wife wasn't with me at the show that year, but my wife had almost the same hair, like pretty much that short from the floor. And then
I thought as you. I thought you were going to say same hair as you.
No, I haven't had hair in a while. But that's just such a beautiful piece of music. Where can people go? You mentioned Bandcamp. Steve's going to put your YouTube channel in there. Where can they go to really come through your body of work?
I mean, if you go to davekerzner.com, you'll get the hub for everything. Okay. Sonic Elements is the name of the Bandcamp page, and most of the stuff is there. I tend to, my new thing, which I encourage other music artists to do if they have control of their catalog, as we were talking before, is put just singles or EPs on the streaming services because they don't pay the artist fairly. In fact, Adrian Blue just made a really interesting rant about in interviews with Anil Prasad about how basically those streaming services are not a viable business for music artists, especially this genre, where you don't get millions and millions of people into prog. Right. So you have to do just try new things. So one of the things that I'm trying this time is I have an EP of 5 songs from The Traveler called The Traveler Singles, and it's on everything. So you can listen to that for free on Spotify and Apple Music and Pandora and everything. They're abridged in the sense that they're kind of radio edits, 4-minute versions of the songs and stuff. Although they work nicely as 4-minute versions too. So it's not to say that they're less actually, but if you want more, you can buy the album on Bandcamp, or you can buy, there's a version on iTunes as well. But the quality's better on Bandcamp, and of course you can get the CD as well. And I'm going to come out with vinyl. So yeah, those are the places. Yeah, the vinyl's not ready yet, but the album cover was done by an artist named Rafal Obinsky, and it's kind of like surreal, like not like Roger Dean, but a top artist like that, who's doing a surreal painting. And that's, I love Roger Dean covers. But this is less fantasy and more like Magritte or, this kind of style. And Obinsky's paintings sell for thousands of dollars in museums and go on covers of, Newsweek and all these things. You've seen it probably before.
Yeah.
And my family's in the art business, so I kind of used that connection finally. I hadn't done it for my music career yet. I was like, all right, it's time to
pull in that flag.
Yeah, and just because I always wanted to do it. And so he did a custom painting for this album cover, and it's going to look great on the vinyl, on the 12-inch. So
nice.
That's coming.
I'm curious, were those shorter edits an afterthought, or was it like, let me see what I could do with these to make them that type of thing for the singles? Or when you wrote and recorded, did you kind of have both Jekyll and Hyde versions in your head, if you will?
Well, yes and no. For instance, the first song, Another Lifetime, I was originally gonna have it go musically, instrumentally, and then the vocal come in, and then I cut it earlier, and then I brought it back. And then for the singles version, I cut it earlier, so the vocals come in sooner.
Got it.
In general, but no, otherwise the definitive versions for me are the main album versions. Yeah. And what happens is a lot of times radio stations will ask for a 4-minute or less version because they don't really want anything more than 4 minutes. So you do what's called a radio edit. And I'm used to doing that. I did that for Sound of Contact. I did it for almost every project. Not that I get a lot of radio airplay, but just in case you have it there so that there's more of a chance. Even though the first song I ever had played on the radio was on Planet Rock, and it was a 10-minute song. It was Stranded with Durga McBroom and Steve Hackett on it. And Keith Emerson introduced it. And that's why and the reason it was the first song of mine, at least not the first song I ever wrote, but the first song with me singing and first song from my solo stuff, was because Keith, who was a dear friend of mine and was so kind, and he said, look, I'm doing a show and they're asking me to play something modern. And he's a guest on their show, and he's like, I don't, can I play your stuff? And I'm like, it's not really ready, but sure. So I gave him an early version of Strand. It was almost ready, but the album wasn't out yet, and they played that. It was a 10-minute song, and I'll never forget it too, because he told me, and he was just so great. He said, Dave, I can't imitate him, but when ELP, in the beginning they did the Isle of Wight. And he said they played, I think it was Pictures at an exhibition, and he said it was a 10-minute song, and they insisted, and then they played it on the radio, even though it was 10 minutes, and he felt like it was a triumph. And he said, this is like that. And I thought, this is like that? I'm like, dude, but it was such a good feeling, like one of your heroes.
Yeah.
And it was, I actually have his introduction on YouTube. If you look up the song Stranded, you can hear, I had to record it. This is like gold,
Wow.
Yeah, you hear the way he introduced it. He talks about Durga.
I gotta check this out.
Yeah, check it out. It's cool. And so anyway, but yeah, those versions. I feel like sometimes when you cut a song down, you cut out a part that's like that kind of needs that bridge or that solo, whatever. It's like not as good. I feel like these versions they work. Like they don't, they're concise, and they're sort of like, all right, you know what? I enjoy them. Even like in a different way. Like if I was just kind of like casually listening, or if I wanted to play it, or even like where you right now, you were just playing snippets and stuff. It's not as much like a snippet, but it's sort of like I think just the other day I was doing an audio test of speakers. And I pulled up my music because I know my music. And I thought, oh man, my new album's not on here, on Apple Music or something. It's just, you have to buy it. And I thought, oh, that's a shame. It'd be good if there was something on there. So if you wanted to just listen to a sampling of the album and get the gist, it's like an abridged version of the album, which is its own little experience. That's kind of nice. And when you hear the changes, they work. It doesn't sound like, oh, what happened? More or less.
You mean like when they cut out the middle of Roundabout?
Yeah, exactly. There's sometimes it's that bad. I don't know. Some people could argue with me about my songs and say, no, this is an abomination, cutting it down. But my answer to that is, well, then buy the album.
Yeah. Hey,
full version. There's nothing wrong with buying an album.
That's right. That's what it should be all about.
Yeah, I like how throughout your catalog you have these songs that can get like really heavy, and the drums and the keyboards are like really up in front, but you also have like these gentler songs that are also really good, like Be the Light in Continuum, or on this new album For Granted and Feels Like Home. It's just like sometimes you kind of need like the softer stuff to balance out the other stuff, and I really enjoy that.
So thank you. And that's actually something that Yes has always done really well.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a big Yes dynamic thing that's an influence on me for sure. Things like, let's say, Gates of Delirium, where you have all this chaos and everything, and then you get this beautiful serene moment with Soon, and you have this kind of soaring thing right before it, and it's just, I don't know, like that blend has always been a fun thing for me, to be like beauty and heaviness. Together. It has an impact.
You could put Wondrous Stories on any Yes album, and it does that. It's like it resolves to this beautiful sort of let you catch your breath a little bit sort of a thing. And who would have ever thought, without hearing it, for the first time, that Gates of Delirium would actually resolve into what Soon is. You just do not see that coming at all. And here's this beautiful, the sun is coming up, it's just amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And Awaken. Well.
Oh God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Steve, you want to take us out with the last question?
Yeah. So we brought up Arc of Life in the conversation earlier, and what I was wondering is whether there's anything you can say about the next album and the future of Arc of Life, or any of these other projects you're working on.
The Arc of Life has a new album that's going to be coming out. I'm not sure exactly when. I think later this year, though. And it's already done, I can tell you that.
Nice. And
actually, I need to shoot. We're shooting a video. I need to get my act together for that. It's a challenging thing, because those kind of bands where people live in different parts of the world, it's a challenge. But the only thing is, I play keyboards in the band, and I don't write, I don't even sing, and that's going to change for the third album. It was going to change for the second album, but we just, timing, because they're so busy with Yes, John and Billy, that it was just kind of like, and then the pandemic and everything, blah, blah, blah. But, I got to say, like, I'm totally cool with it, because I'm honored to be part of the project. I think I can offer more to the project, to the band, than I do on the first two albums. But it's okay for me personally, because I have all these other outlets for my music. So it's not like I'm putting all my eggs in that basket. It's more like, kind of like, hey, when you guys want, I can contribute songwriting and sing. And Billy, who joined me recently, because he's on my new album and then played live with us for Rawsfest and Cruise to the Edge, was like, we got to get you to sing on the next Arc of Life record. I'm like, all right, let's do it. So I think the third one we plan to write all together in the same room, which would be very, very cool.
Oh, yeah.
So this new album, I can't say too much about it, but I can tell you that it's very much in the vein of like what you heard on the first record, maybe a bit proggier, actually.
Interesting.
But kind of very Billy driven, like a lot of his bands. So like a lot of his vocals, a lot of his songwriting. So if you're a fan of Circa and if you're a fan of the first Arc record and stuff, I think you'll like it. It's their, it's a Yes side project. So obviously their priority is Yes and Asia for Billy, and Jeff. And John's been writing a lot for Yes. So it's kind of. But that said, I had another band with John that we were going to do, and I don't know, we could still maybe do it, but I have a whole bunch of stuff that I wrote that's kind of in the Yes vein that I don't know if it'll be Arc of Life either. I wrote it with Fernando Perdomo. So we may put that out we have a project called Squids Out to Sea, so we could either put it out as that, or maybe we'll do another band thing. I don't know. It's fun. It's cool music, and it has a lot of vintage, Yes influence, more so than anything else I've done.
That's great.
But we could just get John to sing on it, and there's another person we work with named Robin Shell, who sings on stuff, and he's got a very high voice like that as well.
We've heard him, yeah.
Great. He sings on the Yesterday and Today. So, I'm very, I don't know if it's like my old age or whatever, but like, I'm very easygoing about all that stuff. Like I don't need anything to happen now. Like, oh my God, I want to be in Yes. And like, well, whatever. I don't even know, if it fell in my lap, if Jeff was like handing the mantle, it's like, I can't do this anymore. Dave, you want to do it? And I'm like, all right, yeah, I'll do it. But like, it's not like I need that to happen, or I'm hoping anything like that happens, or Arc. It's like, yeah, whatever. I'm going with the flow. So there's a new album coming out. Maybe we'll play live. Maybe we even talked about my solo band and Arc playing a show together, which I think would be great. Kill two birds with one stone. We're all there, and we just play all this music. That'd be great for me because I loved my biggest love out of all the tributes and everything is doing my own music. I feel like that's what I have. There's a lot of great keyboard players out there who could do prog, but not everybody writes songs, and everybody's songs, when you do write them, are kind of unique to them. So I feel like that's what I have to offer more than keyboards and mellotrons, and that's cool. But like, I can write a song and I want to sing my songs. And if people love those songs, there's a connection, and it's it's my favorite thing. So everything else is just kind of like fun,
Yeah.
Like it's like, I would love to.
That's what music should be about.
I actually like the guy.
Yeah. I said, that's what music should be about. And that's great that you still feel that way. It's about having fun. And what kind of, two things. First, what kind of rip in the universe, or at least our galaxy, would there be if you were in Yes with Tony Banks keyboards? That's number one. Number two. Number two, Steve and I may know something about the new Arc of Life album that you don't know. Did you see our interview with Billy Sherwood from about a month and a half or 2 months ago?
It was 3 months ago.
Was it that long ago? Okay.
Yeah.
So Billy said when he went and did Cruise to the Edge with you, he commented on what a taskmaster you were, and he appreciated the attention to detail and everything, but he did say he was going to get you back. So maybe he's referring to how the new album's going to go down. We got a kick out of that.
I don't. Who knows? But Billy's.
I don't remember that part at all.
So really?
Yeah.
I thought it was funny the way he said it, because he thought, I'm going to Cruise to the Edge, and I'm not playing. It's not going to be too heady. And then you put him through this as he described it, such grueling prep for that. And it like totally spun his head around as what he expected.
Oh, now I understand.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. So now he says he's going to get you back.
Of course he is. Yeah.
There was so much in that interview. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, okay, now I know what you mean as far as playing live. Yeah, I gave him a lot to learn. A lot, and not on purpose, not as a like a punishment or anything.
Right.
It's just what the gig calls for.
Yeah.
And it made his head spin because it was like charts and all this stuff. And I'm like, that's what it is. But then when I play with Ark, he'll be like, oh, and by the way, we're gonna do Awaken. No, I don't know what it's gonna be, but like we're gonna do this. But I'm fine with that. Like I said, it's fun. It's a challenge. I would love to play Yes songs. Like I said, I was never in a tribute band or anything like that. And to have to, when I was stayed with Jeff Downes in Wales, he invited me over to stay with him. And it was fascinating. And I got to watch him learn Relayer at the time.
Oh, wow.
And he was going over, and it was so cool because so it's like he wasn't the original keyboard player. He has to learn this. Right. And he's going, oh, now listen to this part. How isn't that cool part? And it was like, I saw the kid in him, even in him.
Yeah, he's a huge Patrick Moraz fan.
Moraz. Yeah, because Patrick Moraz is great. So, but it was cool to see like a fellow keyboardist, of that caliber, that
geek out on it and everything. Yeah,
geek out on it, kind of go like, whoa, look at this, and kind of having fun. Like, all right, I'm a musician. I'm going to learn this. I have a lot of respect for Jeff, because he, like you said, even going back to when you got to see him with Drama, he was thrown into the deep end from the learning Rick Wakeman's parts.
Yeah.
And even still today, he's up for the challenge and he does all those things. He's so professional about it. And, when you see people picking and choosing who they like better, and sometimes they don't give him enough credit, I think. Him and also John Davison. It's like, man, these guys are pros. Yeah. They are pros, and they take it very seriously. And obviously, Rick Wakeman is Rick Wakeman. It's just like Bill Bruford. Like, there's never going to be another Rick Wakeman. He's great. Right. He's Rick Wakeman. And Patrick Moraz is Patrick Moraz, man. But Jeff Downes is Jeff Downes. His is a little different. He's orchestral. He does all these other things when he writes and stuff. But as a keyboard player, I admire him because he'll take it on and he'll learn it and he'll have fun.
Yeah, and it's not just learning the math and the notes, it's the sounds as well. To get those sounds. When you talked about, Davison Studios and matching the sounds, was it a ribbon mic, tube mic, all these different things. He's using modern gear to get these sounds that Patrick had in 1970. There's that whole element too.
Some criticism over all of them, including Rick Wakeman, over the sounds they choose. Yeah. Sometimes the sounds on the classic 70s records, the instruments themselves sounded great. So you could almost do it wrong, but the sounds on Close to the Edge are incredible. They're perfect. They're just amazing.
The popping of the Hammond B3, you can hear the popping of the notes.
You can't go wrong with that. You start playing those sounds with like Roland D50s and, Yamahas, and it's like, cringe. So and they're not always trying to. In fact, all those guys, not all those guys, but most of those guys, including Tony Banks, they're like not as purist about recreating that sound. In fact, especially if they recreate it, it's their own thing. They're like, Tony's like, I don't care. It's not as precious to me as it is to you guys. Right. And I'm like, yeah, but if you're going to replace it, it's got to be a sound that's as good and powerful or better. And sometimes it's like, it just doesn't get any better than a Hammond 3 or a
absolutely.
At least subjectively to us, but so yeah. But anyway, the important thing is that it's fun and it remains fun. So to me, that's how I see all of this, is kind of like, arc of life. If we get to play live, it'll be fun. If he gives me a ton of work, great. It'll push me as a musician. Yeah. And I don't have a problem with that.
That's awesome. Dave, hang out with us for just a minute after we say goodbye to the audience. Thank you so much for taking your valuable gym time away and spending time with us to geek out on your music, Yes Music, Genesis Music, King Crimson Music, recording, engineering, and all that stuff. We really appreciate it. It's been a blast.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Great. And thanks, everybody, for following what we do. If you're hearing the audio version, you can actually see us on facebook.com/Yesshift. And if it's the other way around, you can follow us on anchor.fm/Yesshift, or you can write us. You can give us love notes, hate mail, whatever. You can give us ideas for shows. We've actually produced a few episodes, right, Steve? Based on fan mail.
Yeah, we have. Sometimes we get idea suggestions, and for some of them, it sometimes takes a while, but we love hearing ideas and seeing like what we can do with them. So you can write to us at yesshiftpodcast@gmail.com. And yeah, I think that's pretty much everything. Thanks again, Dave. It's great to hear that there's still a bunch of stuff in the pipeline.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, everybody.